We've got 5 life events that if they're happening to you or if they've happened to you over the past 12 months, they give you reason to pause and reassess your financial and tax picture. So we're going to be going over what those 5 life events are and what you need to be thinking about. If you're like anybody else, as I look through the list, I think 3 of the 5 have happened to me, and some of them have happened more than once. So we're going to be talking about all of that. Plus, of course, to my left on your YouTube screen is one of our fellow certified financial fiduciaries at Nelson Financial Planning. Also happens to be our resident National Social Security advisor, Rob Field. Welcome into the program.
Good morning, Joel. Thanks for letting me join you. Always fun to share our thoughts and ideas with the listeners.
Pleasure, as always, to have you. Of course, if Rob is here, his specialty being Social Security, one of the things that he likes to talk about. So we're going to be talking about the biggest changes for Social Security here in the new year 2024. I think you got 5 different things that you're going to share with our listening audience this morning.
Correct. Kind of the normal, every year, certain things change automatically. We're going to talk about each one and then how that might affect some of our listeners.
Give you that update. All of that, of course, on this week's episode of Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, coming to you on a host of radio stations throughout the Central Florida region. My name, of course, is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of great folks like Rob, who also are certified financial fiduciaries that stand ready, willing, and able to help you improve your financial plan through a successful and cost-effective approach. So first, Rob, I don't know if you saw this. There was this recent survey asking people about their attitudes about wealth, and this was interesting because one of the things that we do at the office is we're as a team, we're always looking for articles and we always circulate those around. Well, the morning that I saw this survey, Zach, one of our resident associates at Nelson Financial Planning, printed out the exact same article for me to look at in connection with doing some of the preparation that we do each and every week for the radio show. So an interesting survey about attitudes and people and money and the impact of social media, which, you really can't understate that.
Right. I always enjoy these surveys because as financial advisors, we sort of assume what our clients are thinking, what they want to do, and we just kind of use those assumptions and move forward. Every time we see these surveys, they come up with some interesting answers that we didn't necessarily really realize that's what they were thinking, or that this is how the investment markets have been affecting them. So they're always fun to really get some new details.
Especially, we're of a certain age, you and I, Rob, and so we don't spend an awful lot of time on social media. Jamie at the office takes care of that for our operation, and so she was the one that posted the National Dog Biscuit Day. By the way, anytime we post pictures of dogs on social media, it always gets the best reaction. It's never like financial stuff. It's just pictures of dogs.
Right. We'll talk about the dramatic increase in Social Security, and we'll get a couple of likes. And then we'll show a picture of a dog with a Nelson Financial Planning shirt on, and then 50 people love it.
There you go. So, but this is what this survey does: is it underscores the power of that social media. And unfortunately, though, there's a downside. There's a negative to this, because when you look at the survey results, about 25% of respondents said that they feel less satisfied with the amount of money they have because of social media. The perception is certainly influences people's perspective of what their life is. And then the survey continued and found that about a third of all people said that they have spent more than they could afford to keep up with the Joneses on Instagram and other apps and to post pictures of phenomenal vacations or trips or whatever the case may be, because it looks good on social media. It gets a lot of likes, gets a lot of eyeballs, but at the end of the day, if you're spending more than what you can afford, that's not a good financial picture, that's for sure.
Well, no, not at all. And the thing about that I find kind of interesting is they're looking on social media and they're seeing somebody post something that may not even be accurate or true, but they're assuming, oh, then I want to be like that person who is really just acting like they're that successful, and they get them sucked in.
Nobody ever posts the random photos. They only post the best photos, if you will, which is why when we think back to our book that we wrote last year, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, the very first chapter, and we keep seeing this time and time again, the very first chapter in our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, is titled Human Behavior, because human behavior can be very easily influenced and oftentimes can lead to short-sighted decisions where you're spending too much money or you're spending some money that you don't really have. Boy, Rob, that's just a pathway to financial ruin, really, if you think of it.
Correct. When we talk to a lot of our clients who are paying attention to their budget today, and then they work with us over time and they invest their money correctly. And all of a sudden, as they get into retirement years, they're in a pretty good position because they didn't really sacrifice today by trying to do a bunch of funny things and fun stuff yesterday.
Well, that's true. It's all about balance. It's all about making good decisions and not letting social media influence your perception or your behavior. Speaking of surveys and being educated about your finances, another interesting statistic I saw this past week was that there was another study, a lot of studies that come out each and every week, that concluded that the lifetime benefit of a high school student taking a financial literacy class is estimated to exceed over $100,000. Let me say that one again. Lifetime benefit of a high school student taking a financial literacy class is expected to exceed over $100,000. And you know what's crazy about this, Rob? Despite the importance of understanding your finances in order to set yourself up for the best possible future, only about 25% of those high schoolers are actually taking any kind of a course or information in personal finance.
Just doesn't make sense. What a great way to get, for somebody to explain to you how finances work at the high school level. Then as you head off to college and you pick what area you're going to focus on, you're getting some more information. By the time you get out of college, which is a great time to start investing.
Right.
At that point, studies have shown that the earlier you are investing your money and taking care of reducing debt and not accumulating too many things in that realm, it strengthens your portfolio so much on the backside. So I'd like to see more of this encouraged.
Such a crucial time too, Rob, because you point out, you leave high school, you go off to college, you go off to trade school, or whatever the case may be. You're confronted with a lot of choices. You get hit up to get credit cards. You get hit up to take out student loans. You have to understand the finances of that. Once again, another shameless plug of sorts for our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. It's not a financial literacy class, but effectively the book really does function as that, because we really outline those essential tools and strategies to learn, organize, and ultimately achieve financial success. The book is available on Amazon, so check it out there. Speaking of Amazon, big news, big week for Amazon this past week. I don't know if you saw the headline, but on Monday of this past week, something significant happened with Amazon. And so we're going to share that and what that was coming up after these messages. So stay tuned with us through the break here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Rob Field of Nelson Financial Planning. Talking about Amazon before the break, obviously that's where you can go to get a copy of our book, Next Gen Dollars and Cents. I think the folks at Amazon bumped the price up. I think I was seeing it was like $18.99, not $14.99. I don't know how Amazon does that stuff, but check it out on Amazon if you'd like to order your copy. Speaking of Amazon, big week for Amazon this past week. I guess Amazon is all grown up because on Monday, Amazon became a part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So some interesting stuff in terms of kind of where Amazon is in terms of the perception of that company as sort of now one of those corporate stalwarts, if you will, here in America.
Right. I mean, it's very exciting for them. You know, the Dow Jones is just 30 companies, and so they're trying to pick those 30 companies that are kind of indicative of the economy overall. So if you're in there, they think you represent a good part of America, the growth. So to be included is obviously going to be an honor.
That's exactly right. And, you know, what's interesting, and I think a lot of people kind of miss this, is everybody thinks that those 30 companies that you mentioned that make up that index are just sort of a static list of names, and they don't change. The reality is that they do change. And even though there's only 30 companies, about one per year. If you look back since 1999, there's been about 21 changes made to the Dow. So again, it's still 30 companies. So when one company joins, like Amazon goes in, then that means another company is leaving. And in this case, it was Walgreens that left. So they swapped them out this past week. And then, lo and behold, of course, there's a study, as you might well imagine, on sort of the performance of what happens. And what was interesting about this is that the company, on average, if you look at those 20-odd companies that have been put into the Dow over the course of the past 25 years, the average performance over the subsequent 12-month period of time was actually a decline of almost 6%. And then, lo and behold, the company that got kicked out, sort of no longer being a representation of what the index was looking for, actually had an average increase of about 5% over the course of that subsequent 12 months. So it's one of those things where, once you get there, at least in the first year, you might not do as well, particularly versus the company that got replaced. So I thought that was kind of an interesting statistic.
It is kind of funny that you've got this index that represents the stock market, and you kind of rejuggle it so that the companies are balanced in such a way. You pull out this one, you add this one, you would think, oh, company added to the Dow Jones must immediately, but that's not the case.
I think it's one of those things where if you think of it in terms of sports, right? So you're always growing, you're always, you're trying to get back into the game, and then you get back into the game, and then you stop and pause your breath, and then you lose a little traction. So that may be what's happening, but right. Certainly some interesting statistics and perspective when it comes to some of the headlines just this past week. So welcome on in, of course, to Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars, including headlines like Amazon becoming a part of the Dow. What exactly does that mean, and how does that impact me? My name is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning. Joining me on this week's show, Rob Field, one of our fellow certified financial fiduciaries as well at Nelson Financial Planning. So, Rob, this next conversation is really all about change. And I guess when we think about change, it is inevitable. And what we want to do is highlight some of the things that can happen, or happen generally in most people's lives, that really should be trigger events for a reassessment, a reevaluation of your financial picture, your retirement picture, your tax picture. And as I look through this list of these 5 things, Rob, I don't know of really anybody that hasn't been impacted at least by one of these 5.
Sure. You're going to go over the list in a second, but it's talking about things that change in people's lives. And, kids, marriage, your finances, your work, we're all experiencing that in some form or fashion. Change
is part of life. Change is inevitable. But these things in particular really do trigger a sort of a reevaluation, if you will. And certainly there are Other things, I mean, I had to, the show is only an hour show, so we couldn't, have a list of all the 50-odd things. We chose to pick 5 to talk about on this program. But certainly things like the length of your life, your investment performance, all of those are also big issues as well. But today we're kind of focusing on, some of the 5 big triggers that certainly people see in their life. And you alluded to one just now, Rob, and that is the notion of getting married, or flip side, getting divorced, or losing a spouse. There's just multiple ripples when that happens, isn't there?
Right. I mean, when you as an individual, you're looking at your finances one way. When you create a family, you now have other people that are involved in it. That's going to affect your decisions. That family can change. You can add kids or go through divorce. It's going to, again, need you to rearrange and think about, who am I covering? How much money do I need for certain things? If this is changing, do I need to reevaluate my old retirement plan?
Well, certainly it has major implications on the tax side of things. Obviously, it's tax season now, so we're in the middle of preparing a number of tax returns for our clients at Nelson Financial Planning. And, one of the toughest things that happens, I think, is if there is a divorce or sort of loss of a spouse, what happens is, particularly when we think about the taxes, is you wind up shifting from sort of the joint bracket to the single bracket, and that's much more concentrated, or not. It doesn't have as broad of a range, obviously, because single, it's one person versus married, that would be 2. And so what happens is, if income stays relatively the same for that particular individual, then their taxes are going to go up quite a bit. So that's one of the biggest issues, that requires sort of a reassessment when you're getting married, when you're getting divorced, if you lose your spouse. Similarly, as a result of that, you certainly want to adjust the tax withholding on your various sources of income. Another important thing, of course, is the beneficiaries, right? You gotta, if there's someone new or there's someone not new, or someone has left your life, then you certainly want to take time and update beneficiaries as well.
Correct. And then one thing you want to think about is, when a person gets married or gets a divorce, they start thinking about their own finances. But the same thing is, you want to think about the spouse side of it.
Right.
So you're bringing in another person's income or savings, and how do you want to mix that or not mix that? So the spouse's portfolio is now going to change your thought process. And the same thing occurs on the Social Security side. If you are married and then you've got a spouse, you can take a look at the spousal benefit. If you were unmarried and then just got married, you now have added a new option for Social Security. And if you get a divorce, then you also want to think, what are your options there on Social Security? Does that have an effect there?
Sure. No, absolutely. And that just underscores some of those ripples. So if that kind of event happened to you over the past 12 months, that really is sort of a trigger event to sort of reevaluate your financial picture and your taxes. Similarly, if you had kids, right? If you had kids, you're going to have to pay for them. There may be college or trade school or whatever the case may be. A lot of times they may boomerang back. So there could be an ongoing expense element. I guess you've got a couple of kids. I've got 3. I guess most days the expense is worth it, I suppose.
It's definitely worth it. I mean, you give up some things that you might want to do yourself, but again, when you choose to have a child, obviously you got 25 years plus of needing to support them in different ways.
And certainly to think about the tax implications of that, because obviously here it is, the beginning of March, and it's tax season, or well into the thick of it, and a lot of tax credits that come as a result of that. Child tax credits, dependent care credits, various college tax credits that you need to be aware of and sort of adjust the withholding accordingly. Certainly some other things to be thinking about when you have kids as well, and how that requires sort of a reassessment of your financial picture. We're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to go to a break, so we'll return after these messages here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Rob Field of Nelson Financial Planning. In the program, we're talking about some of those big changes that we all experience in life. Change is inevitable, but in particular, we're honing in on 5 different circumstances that, if they happen to you over the course of the past 12 months, it's probably time to really sit down and reassess your financial and tax picture. Before the break, we were talking about marriage, divorce, loss of spouse. That's one particular event that's going to have a major impact. Same thing as having kids, right? So kids have an ongoing expense component. We were talking about some of the tax implications of having kids. You've got child tax credits, you've got dependent care credits, and then if they go off to school, then you've got a variety of college type of credits that are on there. Heaven forbid if they boomerang back, because that means that they may be more of an expense than you counted on, particularly if you are approaching retirement. You know, Rob, that's one of the things that happen that can fundamentally undermine someone's finances, is if you wind up having to support your kids for an extended period of time after they graduate or after they become adults. Unfortunately, we do see that situation from time to time, and it's a tough spot to be in by any stretch of the imagination. But certainly when you have kids, there's some other things too that you probably want to consider, Rob, huh?
Sure. So you think about when you got married and then you had kids, and then if you went through a divorce and remarried, you might be picking up some other people's kids. We've seen from time to time where we've had a husband and wife. They got a couple of kids. One's in high school, one's in college. They walk in, they go, "Hey, just got blessed, got a brand new baby," and that's something that you want to think about. When you do that, you just want to kind of build it all together. Anytime you add a child or bring in and you're changing the family, you want to think in the bigger picture too, on the estate planning side. Yeah. Not just, how am I going to pay for these kids, but where do I want this money to pass to somewhere down the road? Am I going to have one set of kids that, only access to my money, or are we going to blend everybody together? You just kind of want to think that through so you don't get caught off guard. With that estate planning might be a need for life insurance. If you're a younger couple and you're now looking at multiple kids and you got a couple cars and a house payment, and maybe one spouse is at home taking care of all the kids, the other spouse is working. If the spouse who's working, if something happened to them, could create a catastrophic event. So life insurance might be necessary.
Nice term policy there is always a good idea when you have young kids, because then that would help to generate a pile of money that could be used to replace that income.
Exactly. And so those are the things to think about. It's the marriage, and then kids, and then if you go through a divorce, how are you going to handle the kid situation? If you get remarried and new kids enter, each one of those requires you to kind of step back and come up with a plan that benefits you as well as protects everybody.
Well, and a fair point on the estate planning piece as well, because you really got to then go back and sort of adjust and change that as well. So certainly those are a couple of the big events. Similarly, if there's a major change in your finances, and this can be maybe retirement or loss of a job or inheriting money, all of those are major transitions. If you think about retirement, that's probably one of the larger transitions, where you go from a sort of a lifetime of trying to store up money to now I'm going to spend it. What's the most tax efficient way in which to do that? Where should I get the income from? Certainly that's a major change in your finances, major change in life that would require some reevaluation, if you will.
Right, that's probably the biggest one that we always talk about, is from working to retirement. That change is financial, it's emotional, it's time consuming. It affects a lot of different things, and people get caught off guard. They think, "Oh, just flip a switch," but you got to plan ahead and think about, again, we talk about our budget and things like that. So,
yeah, certainly that's a major transition, just like inheriting money. And again, to reference our book that we wrote last year, Next Gen Dollars and Cents, available on Amazon if you would like, or the real secret way to get it. Okay, a free copy is Jamie and Carolyn at the office are pretty good about giving copies when people come in for initial conversation. So maybe that's an incentive to to come in and engage in an absolutely free complimentary conversation with any member of the team here at Nelson Financial Planning, and then that way you can get yours for free, so you don't have to pay the Amazon markup for the book. But the book talks about one of the chapters we dedicated to sort of some of the pitfalls of inheriting money, and that's such a major change in one's finances that you really do have a number of things that you've got to work through and issues to stay on top of. We dedicated a single chapter just to sort of navigating inheriting money and some of the things that you need to think about. So certainly that is a big transition or a big change that can happen in life that requires immediate reassessment. Same thing with health, right? Sure. If you have a significant health change, important, as you were talking about, reviewing the estate plan, that's a good reason to do that, checking the beneficiaries, and maybe the health decision, the health decline sort of forces you to retire earlier. I have a close friend who kind of was forced to sell his business maybe a little bit earlier than what he thought because of some health issues, and so we see that. But there's also the implication on Social Security as well.
Correct. I mean, the decision to take Social Security is based on a variety of things. The earlier you take it, you're going to get a little bit less. You wait some time, you're going to get a little bit more. You know, you were talking about changes in health. We talk a lot about, okay, so somebody gets sick and they start estimating that health care cost is going to go up, and maybe they're thinking about their investments lasting a certain period of time. The flip side, because of modern medicine, right, is that sometimes people who have an illness or disease get over it. And so they've been planning ahead on, well, you know, I'm not going to be around that many years. Suddenly now they're like healthy and they're like, wait a second, this amount of money now needs to stretch farther. So you have to sometimes step back and say, okay, good news, I'm healthier. I need to reevaluate my retirement plan and my income spending and things like that.
Certainly those changes are significant, and they have far-reaching implications in terms of being able to make sure that your money, your investments, your retirement is going to do what it needs to do for the rest of your life. And then lastly on our list, I put down major purchase, right? So if you buy a house, maybe you're buying an RV or a boat or whatever the case may be, there's certainly cost to all of it.
Right, and obviously you've been working. You don't have as much free time as you want. You flip over to retirement. First thing you want to do is whatever your favorite hobby is, you're going to just hit that hard. If it could be golf, could be an RV,
right,
could be boating,
or Harley
could be
Davidson,
fishing, could be a Harley Davidson. Even if you're not quite at retirement, you might want to buy a Harley Davidson. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But those are major expenses. And so a lot of people, when they look at the amount of money they have at retirement and they start talking about income, they base it on that lump sum. But we see 9 times out of 10, before they ever even start taking income, they're scooping off large chunks to buy their toys. And I get it. I'm a fan of that, but you got to build that into your calculation.
Well, and it's to the point, and I remember last summer you and Christina did a great show about budgets. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You know, whether you're at retirement and trying to figure out, you know, what that looks like, and maybe it's an RV or a motorcycle or whatever the case may be. But even if you're just starting out as a younger couple buying that first house, there's some major implications for that. Certainly some tax implications as well. But bottom line, it comes back to that B word, budget. You've got to make sure that you're putting in all of those related costs to make sure that you're able to cover the additional expense of that major purchase.
Right. We've seen clients who sort of just take it, you know, step by step, willy-nilly, like, look, I've saved up a lot of money, I'll be fine. But you can really blow through a chunk of change fast if you don't kind of pull in the reins. And you certainly don't want to retire, start a lifestyle, and then realize 2-3 years into it that's the investments you have are not going to really sustain it correctly. You want to plan ahead before that even occurs.
Sir, so the question is that we will leave our listening audience with here at the end of the segment is, did any of these things happen to you over the course of the past 12 months? Did you get married? Did you get divorced? Did your spouse pass? Did you have kids? Did they boomerang home? Was there a major change in your finances? What about any particular significant health issues? Or did you make a major purchase. All of these things should be triggers for an immediate reevaluation of what your financial and tax picture looks like. So make sure you take the time to make that investigation if any of those things applies to you. We're going to slide to the break here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris and Rob Field of Nelson Financial Planning. Well, this segment of the program here on Dollars and Cents, we're going to update you on the Social Security changes for the year 2024. Joining me this week on the program, Rob Field, fellow certified financial fiduciary and national Social Security advisor at Nelson Financial Planning. Welcome on into the program. We've enjoyed kind of having a conversation about the things that you need to be aware of that are going to change your retirement and tax planning. And, well, certainly Social Security, it changes every year. So you're going to give us kind of the overall update for this year, 2024, right?
Correct. So, we spent some time earlier in the show talking about changes that occur, and those are ones that you want to be prepared for. Think about how you're going to build it around. Everybody that works a certain period of time is going to qualify for Social Security. So every year they make some changes into the amount of your benefit, to how much income gets taxed to fund it, to how much do you have to make to earn a credit, and so on and so forth. And obviously the one that catches everybody's attention the most would be cost of living adjustment.
Right, that's the headline. That's the big headline that always comes out. Yeah.
Correct. And so even if you're not collecting Social Security yet, the cost of living adjustment would be added to your estimated benefit. So if you're going to ssa.gov and you're looking at estimates of what could I get at 62 or 64, 66, 68, every year those numbers, even if you haven't started Social Security, they do go up. Now, if you're on Social Security, then it's more exciting because now you're hoping to get a little bit of a pay raise, and so that cost of living adjustment is applied every year. As you know, you earn Social Security 1 month, you get paid the following. So technically the 2024 cost of living adjustment started in December of 2023, and then in January you saw your first bump up. For this year, we are going up about 3.2%, not as big as the previous years, but we've seen inflation kind of slow down, but the price of loaf of bread, eggs has gone up, so the cost of living adjustment based on looking at prices and wages and things like that, they've adjusted it up 3.2%, which is good. It's a nice start.
Nice start. Last year it was what, 5?
Last year we had the 8.7.
Okay.
And then the year before that, in 2022, we had the 5.9 increase. If we take 8.7, 5.9, and then the 3.2 that you'll experience in 2024, you're actually up about 17.8% over the last 3 years. Seems big, right? Almost a 20% increase, but inflation the last few years has just eaten it right back down.
Well, I think what's interesting about that number is that, and I guess when you see these surveys of consumers and their concerns about the economy and how they are feeling in terms of the price of just household items, particularly at the grocery store. Let's face it, when you add those numbers up, that's a 20% increase over effectively a 3-year period of time. And you get your inflation increase, but the reality is that stuff still costs about 20% more than it did just 3 years ago. So I think that sort of helps to explain some of the consumer surveys and things like that you see out there, where people aren't feeling maybe as great about things as some of the other economic data is showing, and that's actually one of the things that we're going to talk about next week on the program. We've got some thoughts that we want to kind of share with you that are very market related, that go directly to sort of talking about some of the things that are going right out there. Because I think far too often when you hear these surveys, you hear a lot of stuff about people feeling that things aren't going right. The biggest of which I think is this 20% bump in the cost that isn't going away. Once it's there, once it's in the soup, it's in the soup. You can't pull it out. So
yeah, inflation's funny. Things go up, But seldom do we say, oh, you know what? Let's cost of bread's going to start going down. It just doesn't work that way.
That doesn't work.
It just maybe we can slow down the increase, but it's going to increase.
So that's the headline, the COLA increase. But you've got 4 other things that sort of have gotten adjusted as well, as they do each and every year. So what's next on the list?
Correct. COLA gets all the news because that's people can understand it directly. But part of Social Security, if you're on Medicare, is that you're paying the Part B premium.
Sure.
And that's either going to be deducted from your Social Security, or if you're not on Social Security yet, they're going to bill you for it. Last year we actually had a slight decrease in what the Medicare premium was. There was a couple of new drugs that had come out that ended up being less expensive than they had thought. And then we had that larger cost of living adjustment. People were pretty excited.
Right,
this
nice
year,
net benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
We got a 3.2, which is still moving upwards, but the cost of Medicare for Part B, that's the doctors and the office visits, went up another $10. So you got a 3.2% increase, but you're going to have to peel back $10 of that for an increase in the Medicare cost.
So what you get with one hand, you get taken away with the other.
Right. Everybody's like, people tell me, I just don't feel like my Social Security has gone up by 20%. I don't see it. I don't feel it. But it did. It's just inflation's a cruel monster that will not slow down.
Yeah.
We also were talking about, how do we fund Social Security? People talk a lot about there's a big trust fund that's got trillions of dollars in it that got hit kind of hard over the last few years because of COVID and some people that were kind of forced out. We're at an age in which they just weren't going to go back into the workforce. So we had a large amount of people retiring faster than normal and knocked down the trust fund. But the trust fund's still holding pretty steadily. The main area that Social Security is funded by is they're taxing with the FICA tax people that work. And that goes to fund Social Security and for the future and things like that. It's a total of 12.4%. Half of it's usually covered by your employer.
Right.
If you work for a company, you're covering the other half. But if you're self-employed, you're actually paying them 12.4% in FICA tax to fund Social Security going forward.
Well, and that's the real tax alert and the issue that we run into an awful lot during the course of tax season. If you get paid on a 1099, this is where it really can bite. Because if you're paid on a 1099, what that means is that you are an independent contractor as it relates to that income, which means that you're not just the employee, you're the employer. And so, Rob, to your point, that means you're paying both sides of that FICA. You're paying the full 12.4. So we constantly run into people that have it got issued out 1099s for these jobs that they were doing. And the tax implications are huge because on the 1099, there's never any tax withholding. And then when you run it through the tax return, not only, of course, is it taxable because it's income, but then you have to pay both sides of the FICA, which is like another 12.4. So if you're in the 22% bracket and you get yourself a 1099, you're paying 34% pretty quick on the amount that you got. So be very careful. If you see you got one of those 1099s, really brace yourself for how that's going to play out on the taxes, because the Social Security tax, Rob, as you point out, that's got two sides of it.
Right. And if you're 1099 and a lot of people will have a normal job and taxes being withheld as we move along, the employer's kind of helping them out there, and then they've got some withholding. A lot of people on the 1099 forget that there is no tax being withheld automatically.
Right.
And so they get caught off guard at the end of the year. And you got to be real careful about that.
Yeah. Social Security earnings test, where did that go to for this year?
All right. So last year you were paying tax up to $160,200, and anything above that you weren't being taxed on. Bumped up for 2024, it's now $168,600, which just means if you're making less than the 162, you won't notice a difference. But if you're making a couple of $100,000 a year, you're now going to pay more towards Social Security, so you're going to see a reduction.
Right, and then of course the earnings limit also increase as it does each and every year. That's a sort of an inflationary adjustment. What's the earnings limit? 22,320, I guess, is the number on that. That's the amount of earnings you can make without having to give back your Social Security.
Correct. That number has gone up also. So you get taxed on your income, and that goes to help fund Social Security.
Right.
And then at some point, you're going to come up to the place where, you want to either collect Social Security or not collect Social Security. The amount of money you can make will affect your decision.
And then lastly, the qualification, you got to earn over $1,730 in order for that to qualify as a credit for Social Security. So that's the update. Rob, thanks for joining us. We're going to wrap it on up and get on out of here. Thank you for listening to Dollars and Cents. If you'd like to have a personal conversation with us during the course of the week, just give the office a call, 407-629-6477, or visit our website, Nelson Financial Planning. Have a great rest of your day.